Let's bring in straight away on the program now Christopher Sabatini. He's a senior research fellow for Latin America at Chatham House. He joins us from London this afternoon. Good to speak to you, as always, Mr. Sabatini. I will come on in a moment to some of the things that our correspondent there just had to say. But first, I want to quote you Rand Paul, the Republican senator in the United States, who has just said, this is beginning to sound a lot like the start of a war. Do you agree?
Well, it's been a slow ramp up over the course of 4 to 5 months now. We really weren't sure, where this would end. Trump was clearly doubling down in an effort. Really, he was pretending this was about narco-terrorism as he defined it, ending the flow of narcotics from Venezuela to the United States, which was really not a problem. Only about 5 to 8% of the cocaine that enters the United States comes from Venezuela, and Venezuela doesn't even produce it. That comes mostly from Colombia. But now the mask has fallen. What we're seeing now is an effort to strangle the Maduro regime by cutting off its access to resources and financing by shipping oil. This was a foreign flag, falsely foreign flagged ship. It was supposedly flagged by Guyana, but Guyana is disowning it. And this is an effort to really sort of send yet another signal to the Maduro government that the U.S. is serious. But we really don't know. So far, the regime has not collapsed. It has not removed Maduro. It has not opened up the doors for the opposition to come in. We really don't know if this will do the trick. And because of that, we really don't know how much farther Donald Trump will go. I think a war and invasion is very unlikely. But if all of the continuing double down doesn't precisely work, we really don't know what the end game is here.
And where do you stand then on the question that's been asked several times over the past couple of weeks now of legality? There have been suggestions that the United States could already have committed war crimes, this in one of those double tap strikes that hit boats in the Caribbean Sea that were carrying alleged drug smugglers. In your view, is what we have seen so far from the Trump administration legal?
No, it's not. Even beginning with the explosion of the boats, as you see there in your feed, there have been more than 20 boats that have been attacked by the Trump administration, the U.S. military, the 10 plus boats that are parked off the coast of Venezuela. And in those cases, it violates, first of all, the U.S.'s own policies for interdicting drugs, which is often to board the boats and confirm that there are indeed narcotics. And now we're in a policy of shoot first and not even ask questions later, just don't even ask questions. So that was clearly illegal. I mean, this is the equivalent of shooting suspected drug dealers on the street, quite frankly. And now we're entering another phase of illegality, which is the boarding of this tanker and the seizing of this tanker. But let's be honest, with the exception of a handful of Republican senators and congresspeople in the U.S., this really, the potential illegality of this simply doesn't matter to this administration. In this case of the tanker now, yes, it's probably in violation of maritime, like not even probably, it's definitely in violation of maritime law. But who's going to enforce that? And we don't know.
And look, you've said, as our correspondent has said, that this really is not about the war on drugs. Now, Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan leader, says this is about oil. Venezuela, we know, does have the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Is there any proof? Any truth, rather? Do you think to his view that this is about oil?
I frankly don't think it is. This is really about regime change being pushed primarily by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Remember, in 2019, Donald Trump also attempted to promote regime change in Venezuela by recognizing an opposition leader who had formed a shadow government. That didn't work. In that case, too, the circle around Maduro did not defect, did not remove him. So now Trump is giving a second try, this time with the threat of force. The truth is yes, Venezuela has a lot of oil. In fact, it has the largest oil reserves in the world. But the truth is the United States is self-sufficient in oil. And in fact, if Venezuelan oil were to be tapped suddenly, that would reduce the price of oil globally and hurt the United States. This is really about Trump's own grudge match against Nicolas Maduro and Secretary of State Marco Rubio's embrace of the opposition, whose leader right now is in Oslo accepting the Nobel Peace Prize, and a desire to remove what Marco Rubio has always believed is a socialist regime in Venezuela that is supporting the Cuban government, which he loathes, being a Cuban American, and bring an end to what he believes are two autocratic socialist governments in the Western Hemisphere.
You talked about the Nobel Prize winner there, Maria Corina Machado. As you say, she's currently in Oslo to collect that prize. Let's just have a listen to a little of what it is she's had to say this afternoon.
Certainly, the regime would have done everything to prevent me from coming. They did not know where I was in hiding in Venezuela, so it was hard for them to stop me. It was rude, nonetheless. And yes, we did get support from the United States government.
Okay, so she is very explicit there, Mr. Sabatini, that she has had support already from the United States, at least to get out of Venezuela to try and receive this award. How significant is it that the US is explicitly helping her out now?
It's not surprising. We knew this all along. Marco Rubio has close contacts. He's had them since he's been a Florida state senator or Florida senator. And basically, they were communicating with the U.S. to try to get her out, to try to coordinate movements and to ensure a safe passage for her out. The question will become now is what happens if the Maduro government doesn't let her back in? Would that be a cause for a declaration of war by the United States? Because clearly they've gone all in supporting Maria Corina Machado. And what that means in terms of her return to Venezuela could be very difficult for her. And quite frankly, I will say this. She has been an inspiration to Venezuelans in the country and in the diaspora. Of the 8 million or so Venezuelans that have been forced to flee the repression and economic collapse caused by Nicolas Maduro. But the truth is if she is not allowed to return, that would be good for the Nicolas Maduro government, because quite frankly, of all the opposition leaders that have had to flee and remain in exile, they've become a fading presence in Venezuelan politics. So it's very much in the Maduro interests to basically prevent her from coming back. And what the U.S. will do to ensure that or to react if they don't is unclear. And again, we get to that point I was making earlier, the risk of escalation here with an unknown endpoint.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the risk of escalation, Donald Trump, of course, when he was campaigning, when he was critical of the Biden administration back in the day, was clear that he wanted to stay out of foreign wars, wasn't he? MAGA Republicans also don't really want an interventionist United States. So what's your sense as to how much support possible regime change in Venezuela has among his base?
Quite frankly, very little. I saw polls recently that about 17% of Americans support the use of military force in Venezuela. He hasn't made the case effectively. And quite frankly, he's also now been changing his argument. He argued originally this was about narcotics. Now he's seizing oil tankers. And he's continued this build up where 14% of U.S. naval assets are parked off the coast of Venezuela. And that doesn't include the F-35s as well as the B-52 bombers and other planes that have been flying off the coastline and slightly sort of flirting around Venezuelan airspace. So again, we are probably just a whisker away from some accident that could trigger some reaction by Trump. If, for example, a surface-to-air missile, which Venezuela has surface-to-air missiles thanks to Russia, were to take down one of those boats, there could be a full-fledged reaction. And we really don't know how the U.S. people will react to that. But we're already seeing some challenges within Trump's MAGA base and within a handful, not many, Republican senators. But I think this seizure of the tanker is going to expose to many people this is not about drugs. There's something else at work here. And that makes it much more risky because, quite frankly, Venezuela, while not Iraq, is twice the size of Iraq. It's a country of 30 million people, over 30 million people. And it's a country of jungle and mountains and multiple urban centers. It would be very difficult for the U.S. to take it over or to invade. And even if there were magically some regime change, the truth is, and in this the Trump administration is right, it's a deeply corrupt government with a number of paramilitaries, with the Colombian ELN guerrilla group that is deeply active in Venezuela, and a military that's deeply embedded in illicit activities, including the trafficking of cocaine, as well as illegal gold mining and money laundering. So this is not going to be a clean operation. It could pin down the United States in Venezuela, especially at a time when the United States has sort of closed off its development program and is refusing to commit to development assistance. It may end up breaking Venezuela and not being there to pick up the pieces.
All right, Christopher Sabatini talking to us from Chatham House about events in Venezuela. Thank you very much indeed.